I love what I saw up in Kansas City as the Big 12, other writers, media, the conference honored this man right here, as Brett McMurphy called him the Yul Brynner of sports media. Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports.
That's the Pharaoh. I mean, like, that's what you could be, the Pharaoh.
Oh.
So, yeah.
What was it like wrapping up all that weekend, Dennis?
You know what? I'll take 1% of Yul Brynner's estate right now. That'd be good. It was great. It was shocking. There are 200, I guess, messages on Facebook I still have to read. I was getting texts from coaches. People, they're believe it or not, random people on the street at the Big 12 tournament and in the stands were wishing me well in retirement. That was pretty cool. So I never expected that. It was a little bit overwhelming, especially since I was still working. I still got a few days to go.
Yep, you do. It's great to see your face, and also thanks for your time, Paul.
So, Dennis, what was it about now that just felt right? Time to hang it up and I guess write less. I mean, I don't think writers ever stop writing. I mean, you're still going to write. You can't stop doing that. But writing every day and working the beat.
It was just time. Congruently, the day I announced my retirement is also the day that John Feinstein passed away, the fine writer from the Washington Post. We're the same age. So it kind of hit home right then that, you better get busy out there living and being with the family and wife more, and enjoying life. I mean, I think I've done most everything I've wanted to do. Every time I start feeling maudlin or having withdrawal symptoms, I think about, being in a press box at midnight, trying to come up with a lead, trying to hit a deadline and getting up early the next day to catch a flight. So I won't miss it that much. I'll miss the people. It's the people. It's you guys. It's everybody, my friends and colleagues that I'll really miss.
What was the first thing you ever covered? Do you remember?
I do. I was at the Sherman Democrat in Texas. Sherman,
wow.
Texas. Yeah. And it was a two-man staff, and my beat was Austin College. Now, Austin College is a pretty significant football program. I think it's Division III now. Back then it was NAIA, and they were nationally ranked. Bill Snyder went to Austin College, believe it or not. There's some other people in there, and I covered them. And I'm pretty sure it was non-scholarship, so it wasn't big time at all compared to other stuff. But I thought it was like covering the Dallas Cowboys.
In 1981, they were 11-1-1 and won the championship. Yep.
And that was the 80 season. I think they went to the play. I can't remember, but it was something. Larry Kramer, he's an old Nebraska lineman, was the head coach. He's passed away now. And I remember him telling me, you have to go through me for interviews. Well, they didn't teach us that in journalism, that you had to go through the head coach for interviews. So I kind of railed on that.
Dennis, you reported on something last week that is going on in all the conferences where the Big 12 talked about it, and that's the football play-in tournament. And every time it comes up, I have the same question. Do the people coming up with an idea realize that the fans never asked for that?
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. And what you're referring to is, automatic qualifiers for the college football playoff. But to get there, a lot of these commissioners are modeling play-in games. So let's say there are 4 in the Big Ten. On Championship Saturday, where we were used to just the championship games, there would then be four Big Ten games to get in. The winners get in. And that's the whole idea, is to create content, go back to the rights holders and demand more money from them, and try to keep this under control. I have a story coming out tomorrow on how undervalued college football is. And part of it is because each little fiefdom, these conferences control their own media rights. They want to, they want to negotiate separately, where every model is shown. If there was a single entity like the NFL, this thing would probably produce $4 to $5 billion more to be shared by schools. And Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti, the SEC and Big Ten commissioners, probably wouldn't be the head of that. and that's why they're against it. So in the Big 12, that looks like, and again, it's not for sure, it's just being modeled right now. That would probably look like 2 games, 1 versus 4. Think of the standings: 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3, and the 2 winners go as automatic qualifiers. In that scenario, which I pointed out in the story, there wouldn't be really a conference champion. You'd maybe have a regular season conference champion.
Dennis, change is going to happen in anything in life. Is it as fun to cover the games now with so much legal issues and all that as it was even, I don't know, 10 years ago or whatever?
Yeah, Smokey, it always comes around to Saturdays. Saturdays, I don't care if Shedeur Sanders is driving a Maybach or has a gold watch. It's still about the games. The people in the stands, 99% of them don't care what they make on Saturdays. So in that sense, it's the same. The other stuff, it just seems like it never ends. It's not conference realignment, it's lawsuits and the House settlement. And I'm not going to say it drove me out of the business, but I won't miss it. Having to cover that stuff every day and sitting around hotel lobbies where nothing happens. How many times have I done that in some of these big high profile meetings? But it's going to continue. I'll tell you what, when this thing hits on July 1st, this revenue sharing thing, it's going to be absolutely crazy. There are going to be lawsuits out the you-know-what because of the money involved.
Dennis, you covered the Big 12 tournament. West Virginia left out of this thing, and they were snubbed ostensibly for North Carolina, Oklahoma, Texas, whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
But North Carolina is the one who's the flashpoint of this. What's your take on the entire situation with North Carolina's record, with the way West Virginia's played, with Bubba Cunningham being the head of the committee, all of that?
You spent hours selecting your patio sofa. Choosing that grill would have taken weeks. Probably your car needed way more time. For sure, you would have spent months mulling over that pool of yours. Protecting your prized possessions needs no time, though. Just visit coversandall.com, create a custom size per your requirements, pick a fabric, and personalize your cover. And leave the rest to us. Premium protection for all that you love.
Yeah, it's really bad optics. I mean, the West Virginia thing, people don't know the governor had a press conference today of that state and he's going to investigate the NCAA selection committee. It's less about that because when they lost in Kansas City last week, I thought they were in. They probably deserve to be in. Certainly, everybody deserves to be in front of North Carolina, and that's really the story. 1-12 against Quad 1 teams. The committee chair is Bubba Cunningham, who's the North Carolina AD who profited off this. He gets $100,000 bonus reportedly if UNC makes the tournament, and they didn't deserve to make the tournament. Somebody's going to have to explain something how they got in front of the likes of West Virginia and some of these other schools. So it is really bad optics. It's not a West Virginia thing. It's more of a North Carolina thing.
What are your thoughts about Brett Yormark and what he's done? He made the comment, the statement, we're disappointed we didn't get in 8 teams in West Virginia. The other conferences have given up a little bit of that. Not only they've given up turf to the SEC and the Big Ten. Is he as tough bulldog as we thought when he first arrived in the Big 12?
He's got Smokey. He's got a new idea every day. And that's why they've kind of gotten to this point of being relevant. The Big 12's in a great position right now. And I keep saying this. This is a total compliment. They're very secure because they have 16 teams that nobody wants. And you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. Nobody's going to come poaching those teams. They can make their own identity. Arizona State was one of the best stories in the country last year, going from picked last 16th and winning the league, and probably should have beat Texas to move on. But they tried for this. They've tried for UConn, didn't get them. Tried for Gonzaga, didn't get them. Tried for this private equity play last year, and the presidents didn't want to do it. Didn't want to give up that much equity and that much debt. There may be something else in the works regarding that. but he's an idea guy. And I think as long as he's there, he's going to keep them relevant. He gets along with Sankey and Petitti, the Big Ten and SEC commissioners. I think in his heart of hearts, I think he would love 2 automatic teams in every year in this league. And there will be a chance if they expand, and I think they will, to 14, to get a 3rd team in. There will be a spot there, an at-large spot for the ACC or any of the conferences to get another team in. So there's a chance to get them in. But I think for the Big 12 to be guaranteed 2 spots, that's an absolute win.
Craig is not here today. He's on his birthday over the weekend, but he'll be here tomorrow. He brought that up. Hey, guys, you can look at all the numbers you want. They have 1 now. And now they're going to get 2. No matter how big the field gets, you're going to get twice as many, even though that's not that. He's been saying that from the beginning. And I don't know if I've been able to lock into that idea yet.
Yeah, no, I think it's good because, look, sooner or later you have to understand the reality that those 2 conferences not only perceptually have all the power, they really do. It's written into the new contract with ESPN that they can decide almost alone on expansion and how many teams get in. It could get ugly if it comes to that. They would like to have, people like Brett Yormark and Jim Phillips in the ACC would like to have a discussion, but they can flex and do that. I mean, that's, they're doing it because they can. But Brett Yormark didn't get to where he is by capitulating to people. He knows how to do deals. He's very transactional. You give me something, I'll give you something. And, at first glance, the Big 12, again, because I said those 16 teams are, 16 teams nobody wants, but there's something to be pleased. He's got cards he can play. And he did it at the Big 12 tournament. It's been 3 years now. He sold those courtside seats for $2,000 each. He brought Shaquille O'Neal in to do a concert, a DJ concert the last 3 years. So he's made it a destination. And I keep saying it is year after year the best conference tournament in the country.
Hey, look, Dennis, I haven't been back to Kansas City since he did that, but I'll tell you, I would have rather sat anywhere. Like, I know they were courtside, but I once had to sit for 3 games in a day next to Will Perdue in one of those seats. And in the 3rd row, not great, Dennis, not great. So I'm glad they sold them. I felt miserable, and I couldn't complain. I'm 5'7". I was uncomfortable.
5'6".
I 5'7". I felt so bad for Will Perdue. So I'm glad that they sold those seats and cleared them out because he's 7'3". So yeah, exactly. My concern with the automatic bids and all that is I just feel like, and I've asked several people this, that the SEC and Big Ten are guarding against an eventuality or a possibility that's only going to happen once every 10 years. Where it would just be random. So they're trying to guard against this thing that if they just left it alone, it would just happen naturally.
Yeah, here's the reason why they're doing it. And you're right. They're going to get those 4 teams in every year. And you said once every 10 years they won't. Yeah, that's about right. So why do they need AQs? Here's why. When the Big Ten expanded to 18 teams, Tony Petitti looked at his lineup and said, well, we need more access. We've got more teams than anybody else. So we have to make sure these teams take in to guard against what you just talked about. And I think Fox is in bed with them. Fox, I've been told, who has, one of the contracts, I've been told said they're worried about the Big Ten's access. In other words, they won't be consistent enough to get all those spots every year. So they're very much in favor of AQs. From the SEC standpoint, they're looking at a 9th conference game. I think they're going to get there. They've been negotiating with ESPN for years to do that, to get away from the traditional 8 games in the SEC, which has gotten them 13 national championships in the last 19 years. But if they can get more money for a 9th conference game, 2 things happen. They get the money, and that 9th game means half the teams in the league suffer a loss. And because that's a possibility, it's reality, actually. Half the teams in the league are going to suffer another loss by playing that 9th game. They need to have their spots in the playoff assured. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's their motivation trying to do it.
Dennis, I want to get into a couple more things about your career. What was the first interview you were intimidated to do, or was there one?
Oh, God. I walked into where was it? It was the summer of '80, and George Brett was going for his, was going after 400. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And I drove down and to the Ranger Stadium, whatever it was called back then. It looked like a big softball stadium. I remember that.
Arlington Stadium?
Yes, yeah. Arlington Stadium.
Yeah.
Drove down to Arlington Stadium and had never maybe been in a major league clubhouse once, and walked in, and guys, totally naked, 67-year-old men walking around after the game. And I forget, I was trying to get, and I did get George Brett in a group and wrote a column about it later. But those major league clubhouses, and I used to cover the Royals on a backup basis here in Kansas City. For some reason, those were always very intimidating to me. When college clubhouses were open, when the locker rooms were open, I thought that was great. I used to be that way, but something about not even football, pro football, but something about those baseball locker rooms. And George Brett, who was the best player in ball at the time, going in there was something different and intimidating.
I had that in a Rangers camp.
Yeah. What's weird about, like, we've been to camp a lot. We've covered the Ranger. Like, you go in and it's one of two ways. It's either super intimidating because the team's wound up tight, or you've walked into a frat party and you didn't realize it. Like, I would just like a middle ground. Like, give me a middle ground so I know that when I turn the corner right into the locker room after waiting out, that I know what I'm walking into, right?
Well, yeah, and in answer to your question, I just thought of my most intimidating moment. In '84 in the Royals clubhouse, I don't know if you guys remember this, there was this giant cocaine scandal and in baseball, and it had snared a lot of the Royals. Willie Wilson, I think, was one of them. And we, the media, when they opened the locker room, had to walk in there, and that's all anybody did not want to talk about. They all had their heads down. They were almost waiting for you to say something so they could snap back. But, eventually people started talking about it, against the advice of their lawyers probably. But I'll never forget that scene. It was like walking into a funeral, because these guys didn't know if they were going to be in the lineup the next day or in jail.
Yeah, no, I've always thought baseball clubhouses, it was different. I think baseball players
different.
a little, very
also,
different.
the fact that they were doing cocaine probably made it so much more intimidating, knowing that, like, if you've got one of them, they weren't going to stop talking.
Yeah, no.
Exactly.
Dennis, you pretty much have covered everything, right? Have you covered every possible major sport event? Not the World Series. As a fan, been to a bunch of, like, 4 or 5 World Series, but have covered baseball, NFL, obviously college basketball, football. One of the most rewarding things, guys, was last year about this time, where I didn't go to the first round. I went to Iowa and spent like 5 days doing the Caitlin Clark story. And it was so different and so pure and so genuine. It was, there wasn't this money thing hanging around. This community had just fallen in love with her. And she's a legit player. You guys know that. You've probably seen her. And it was, I had a new appreciation for the women's game, because it had gotten a lot better since I started, last looked and didn't care. But now it was really cool. Got to be fast friends with their assistant coach, Jan Jensen. Everything was so open. Real quick, during the season, Caitlin Clark she was handled by a big marketing firm, I think Endeavor, and you had to go through them to even talk to her. I said, well, during the NCAA tournament, locker rooms are open, that you have to have access. So that was a good time to go. So I think I wrote every day. That was really fun. Yeah. By the way, you're right. And people like John Feinstein, he's the one that, wasn't he one that fought for the access that we have now when it comes to, like, he was a bulldog with that.
Yeah, among others. There were several years where they were going to take away our seats at courtside in the Final Four, and again, sell them for, unknown amounts of money. It was Feinstein. It was Mike Lupica, the old columnist. And it was really Greg Shaheen, who used to run the tournament, who's now, I think, at private consulting right now, who fought for us. I distinctly remember going to a Cardinals game in 2006. He treated us, or took a bunch of us, because there was an NCAA meeting there. And he made good on his promise. And we're still holding on to those seats at the Final Four, but I suspect someday those will be sold for $10,000 each to some high level.
John Feinstein, you mentioned, wrote a book, Season on the Brink, that I think changed how every sports book after that was written, didn't it?
Yeah. No question. The participation part of that book, where he spent a whole season with Bob Knight, and for people that don't know, he wrote a very honest book. Knight didn't like it, but it peeled back the layers on a very complicated person who, as great a coach as he is, he has many failings as a human being. But I look back when times I tried to do that, right? We call it all access, where you try to get in someplace for an amount of time. And that was, you look back, what he did was really the inspiration. No one had really done it to that extent, for that long, to do a book on it. We now see documentaries all the time now where, cameras are allowed in the locker room. That's something else. This was different. And he wrote 45 books while also being a reporter, various outlets, mostly the Washington Post.
Yeah, we had him on back when we first started this podcast. We were actually doing it initially from Paul's upper deck of his house because we were waiting for the studio to be open, where we have been since September of 2020. A couple more things, Dennis, and again, thanks for your time. What did the degree at the University of Missouri mean to you?
It opened so many doors. When I made a big mistake in college, I didn't get, I didn't get work in between semesters. I forget what you call it when you go
internships or whatever.
Internship. I'm getting old. Internship. I didn't do that, and that was a failing, and I should have gotten that. It would have helped me. But when people know, sources, coaches, whoever else, you're in that Missouri mafia, and that's kind of what we call ourselves. It's like having frankly a business degree from Harvard. I'm not comparing myself to that by any means.
Sure.
I got through by the skin of my teeth. But it's proud. In fact, a person from there called me and did a story, so they popped it out. They posted it the day I announced my retirement, and did like a feature on me here. Here's an old Mizzou alum who did well. So it's been one of the honors of my life.
I'm looking at it right now, the Missouri School of Journalism, and the stories about some of the memories or whatever else. So how much longer is it the tournament until someone's out? Is it to the end of the Final Four? What is your timeline?
End of the Final Four. Last date is officially April 10th. And they were kind enough to allow me to do one more Final Four. I was trying to think how many tournaments I've done. Or had a hand in maybe 20 or more. Final Fours, at least 15. My first was in 1986, covering Kansas at the old Kansas City Star. But this is such a really fun time of year. The stuff they let me do, you were talking about as a treat, they used to let me do the Frozen Four in hockey, because I love hockey so much, after the Final Four. They used to let me, after that, they used to let me do the Stanley Cup playoffs. And so in June, I was sitting there with a coat on, up in a press box, but I loved it. I love hockey. So it was good. I saw Annika Sorenstam play the men at the Colonial.
Yeah.
I think it was 2003. I could not find my story. But that was fun.
Dennis, you're almost the exact same age. I turned 66 in May. I think 45 years in the business for you. I'm approaching that myself. Yeah. We've had you on a bunch during the Big 12 up and down roller coaster. Are they going to survive and realignment? You've always been a go-to to us. We appreciate your time. Congratulations, and smell the roses and enjoy whatever else you're going to cover, and hope to one day still see you down the road.
I appreciate it, Smokey. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Dennis Dodd, CBS Sports, retiring, class of 1980, so he's a year older. 4 decades of covering sports.